Alright, so we have a new chapter pack coming out tomorrow, and Fantasy Flight actually uploaded the images back at a reasonable time. It didn't take them like 2 weeks after the release to upload images this time. So we will do a pack review, and there are quite a few spicy ones in this pack. The Blackwater. So we've got, first of all, the Lannister Shadow event, a very large shadow. Shadow 0, reduce the cost of the next card you bring out of Shadows this phase by 3, and then if there's a scheme plot, you get it back to your hand. So basically, you spend a card to get a 1 gold discount on a Shadows card this turn. And this, you would think, oh, well, you use it in the Shadow decks, right? Well, no, even then, it's still just like a net 1 gold discount. Because you could use your agenda discounts in Assault from the Shadows or Kingdom of Shadows. Well, Kingdom of Shadows discount doesn't apply to this anyways, because it's not a character. But you could use your Assault from the Shadows to put any other random Shadows card into Shadows instead of this. So that's not actually like a combo. I think it would be good if it was a thing to repeatedly get it back to your hand and keep playing it every turn. The recursion would be good. But the scheme plot trait is not common enough to make that viable, and it's not worth putting this in for a one-time 1 gold discount. And you might think, oh, well, you use it to trigger Shadow's abilities, right? Well, I guess you could get an extra Cersei Lannister Shadows trigger with this, but I'd rather just play something like Underhanded Methods if I was going to do that. And you, for Bowels of Casterly Rock, that's a once per phase anyways, and to get the discount, you have to bring something else out of Shadows this phase. So you could just bring out whatever you were going to bring out anyways and trigger the Bowels of Casterly Rock that way. So I don't think this is very good. I don't think it'll really be used. If it was like the Baratheon event and it said Kingdom, you get it back, then it might be good, because Kingdom plots are everywhere. But Scheme, that's not really going to cut it. Then we've got the Bloody Cup, a new Greyjoy event, and this says Faction Greyjoy Loyal, but I'm looking at the... I'm pretty sure this is not loyal. According to this card image, it is a non-loyal event. And it's pretty simple. 2 gold, reaction, after you win an unopposed challenge, choose a character controlled by the losing opponent and place it on top of its owner's deck. Well, this has the potential to be powerful. Greyjoy is already so, overloaded with junk that I doubt this really makes the cut. But I don't know. It's like a better pinch of powder, I guess. Yeah, it's definitely better than a pinch of powder. So it depends on the type of decks you're going up against, I think. If you're going up against a lot of other big guy decks, like if you want to win a Greyjoy mirror match, then you would probably play this. Because if you're going up against another Greyjoy, you can use this on their big characters, and they can't stop it with Risen from the Sea or Drown God Fanatic. It just goes off, and the character goes on top of their deck. And plus, you could potentially pillage the big character then too as well if you do it with Asha or something. So that could be a really big swing right there. But if you're going to run into more lame decks like Martell, then this is not likely to be very useful. We have a Baratheon Shadows location Blackwater Rush, 3 in Shadow 2, and reaction after a card you control comes out of Shadows, kneel Blackwater Rush to choose a Baratheon character. That character gains 1 power. So a little bit of an interesting card here. I think this definitely can work with the Baratheon Shadow decks. Oh, and it is loyal, but it wouldn't be that good in a banner deck because you have to give the power to a Baratheon character. Because what the Baratheon Shadow decks, like the Assault from the Shadows in particular, likes to do is it's kind of a stall deck. Is they sort of just sit there and stop your stuff and control the power challenge. And then just sitting there and triggering this every turn could be a way for them to get passive power and win more easily. It's less vulnerable to being disrupted than the Chamber of the Painted Table combo, but then at the same time it's you're not gaining as much power and you have to put it on a character. But this could definitely be a thing where you just put it on your king character that you have protected anyways, which is a staple of Baratheon decks, is to get Robert or Stannis out there with a bodyguard. So you just keep triggering this and put power on them with it. And it also goes with the new version of Robert, which I believe is in the next pack, where he has an ability that when he gains power, you can gain an additional power for your faction. Obviously, that's a combo. So maybe this will see some play. But I'm always skeptical of cards that only gain power onto characters and do nothing else. An example of that would be the 1 gold dominance location. I can't remember what it's called. Storm's End, maybe? I think it might be Storm's End. Anyways, where when you win dominance, you discard a power off your faction to give 2 power to characters you control, and that card's like terrible and has never been played. This might end up like that, I don't know. Anyways, we have a new Night's Watch event. This one actually is loyal. 2 gold event. After you win a challenge as the attacking player, reveal the top 5 cards of the losing opponent's deck. You may put a character revealed this way into play under your control and place all the rest on the bottom of that player's deck. So again, this is similar to the Greyjoy Bloody Cup event. This has the potential to be really big, but it's going to depend on what type of decks you're going up against. If you're going up against lame decks, it's not very good. If you're going up against decks with big, powerful characters in them, like a Greyjoy deck that has 12 copies of characters that cost 6 or 7 and have powerful abilities, and they're all unique, then this can be pretty good. Because you can like steal an Asha Greyjoy or something, and not only have an Asha Greyjoy on your side for 2 gold, but have the potential to kill her off at some point and prevent the other 2 copies of Asha in the opponent's deck from ever being played. So that could be really strong. It's interesting that it requires winning as an attacking player instead of defending, which kind of goes against the usual Night's Watch theme, but I think it is good and makes it a lot more playable, because events that only trigger on winning defense are not really usable. Like, they're not really worth it most of the time, because it's too hard to control whether or not you're going to get that triggering condition of being able to win a challenge on defense. Since a lot of times, I mean, first of all, just inherently, it's up to what the opponent does, whether or not you have the opportunity to win any challenges on defense. And a lot of times, opponents are just not going to declare challenges that they can see based on the board state that you'll be able to successfully defend. And I mean, especially if you're Night's Watch, like a lot of times they're just going to pass, and then the event's going to sit there in your hand and never do anything. When it's like this, and it's the condition is after you win as the attacker, you have a lot more control over being able to trigger it, and you can make decisions to set it up to where you will win at least one challenge as the attacking player to use it. So we'll see what this does. We have the Covert Loyalist, which is another Targaryen shadow character. I thought Brazen Beast was their shadow character, but I guess they're getting 2, and this one does more closely follow the format of the other ones, where you put it in the shadows. It has Shadow 4, and then you have action, discard a Targaryen card with printing cost 4 or higher from your hand to put it into play. It's not just discard any Targaryen card. And so that makes it a bit more difficult to trigger. You have to discard something 4 or higher. But obviously the combo is you discard Brazen Beast, and then you can put Brazen Beast back in the shadows. But again, Brazen Beast, 6 gold total to put it in the shadows from your discard pile and then bring it out of shadows. And you're not getting any power icons. You're only getting military and intrigue, which are like the icons that Targaryen's already pretty strong on. So I'm not sure how much use this will see. I mean, maybe in Targaryen shadow decks, but even then, I think it's questionable. There's really not that many cards printing cost 4 or higher that you're going to be happy to throw away to put this into play. I think that requirement really might stop it from being used. Or like, I don't know, if it had a power icon, that would help, but it doesn't. So I feel like you might just want to put more copies of Kotho into your deck. Though I guess, well no, he's worse than Kotho because he still actually costs gold, right? If he was totally free, again, that would be different. He might be better than Kotho then. But Kotho is good because he costs 0 gold. You can just spend all your gold and use him. You can't do that with this guy. He still costs 2 gold. So yeah. We have Dagos Mamwoody, a new House Mamwoody and Lord character for Martell, who is a 5 and 5 strength with military and power. And while there are 5 or more different traits among plot cards in your use pile, Dagos Mamwoody gains renown and stealth. So sort of a simple character. A nice variation on the use plot cards theme. Kind of interesting there. And probably a card that can see some use in like Martell, Lord, and Lady decks. Obviously he won't be used in a normal Martell deck because he's an expensive character with like positive abilities as opposed to board clear abilities. But I think he can be good because if you just go Varys' Riddle into At the Gates, that's 4 traits right there. So his ability is pretty easy to activate at that point. And I think if you do At Duran's behest. I don't know what the traits on that are. Actually, I think at Duran's behest is a scheme. Let's see. Oh, this is too annoying. Anyways, at Duran's behest might make him even easier to get online, and maybe he's worth a one of then. I don't know. We have Highgarden Jester. This is kind of a weird character. A 2 gold, 1 strength power icon, ally and fool with insight, but he has the forced reaction. After Highgarden Jester draws a card using insight, place a random card from your hand on top of your deck. Choose a card from your hand and place it on top of your deck instead if there's another fool character in play. So even if you have his ability, the like improved version of his ability active, if you have another fool character. Oh goodness. Sorry, a little distraction there. He's still pretty bad. I mean, the stats are bad, and insight, but you have to put another character on top of your deck, so you didn't actually draw a card. So I guess he's supposed to combo with cards that reveal the top card of your deck. But you already have better ways to activate that, Old Town being the main one. You don't really need to play this guy for that purpose, so seems bad. Don't think you should really ever play it. I don't really see where this will ever be useful. We have King's Landing Riot. This is one of the spicier cards in the pack. So this is a city, 3/1/6, and forced interrupts. When the challenge phase ends, if there are 3 or more city plot cards in your use pile, discard each character from play. So right off the bat, it is worse than Valar Morghulis because you can't do it until turn 4, and even then it delays all the way until the end of that challenges phase as opposed to being when revealed. And it's only 1 more gold than Valar Morghulis, and the fact that it has claim and Valar Morghulis doesn't is not particularly relevant because a lot of times when you're playing those type of plots, you don't care that much about the claim. Just the facts of clearing the opponent's board is what's important. You can deal with just not having claim for that turn. It's not the biggest deal ever. It's definitely not worth the downside of this plot in exchange to get +1 gold and 1 claim, I think. The threat of this plot is the potential to play this plot and then immediately follow it up with Valar Morghulis. Or with with March to the Wall, like the classic Varys combo of going Varys, March to the Wall. And that way you can clear boards that cannot be cleared by only Valar Morghulis. Again, I don't think that's really going to work because I think it's too slow. If you're playing against another really slow deck, like a control-type deck, then they don't care that much about a double Valar because they're built to sustain their value through resets. And if you're playing against a fast deck where that type of big board clear would be strong, it's too slow. You won't be able to do it until like plot 5, and you easily might have just lost at that point. Like if you're playing against Greyjoy or Stark Crossing, you're not going to get to plot 5 to be able to do that. You're going to have to reset earlier than that. So I don't think this is good just at a glance, but maybe some other stuff will come out at some point that makes it better. Hopefully not. I think the game has enough resets. I don't think it really needs more. Meister Kirwan. This is a new Greyjoy guy. This will probably be a one-of in every Greyjoy deck. Very simple card. 2 cost, 1 strength power. Meister and interrupts. When another character will be killed, kill Meister Kirwan to save that character. Also a pretty solid one-of for Conclave decks, right? Just any other character, just kill Meister Kirwan to save him. So yeah, seems solid. Music of Dragons. I hate this card. This is a boring card. Why did they print this? 1 gold, loyal, challenges action, search your deck for a dragon character, reveal it, and add it to your hand, shuffle your deck. So now you get to run 6 copies of Drogon instead of only 3. Seems really fun and interactive. We have Sir Preston Greenfield, a new Kingsguard for the new agenda, and a Shadow Knight for Baratheon, 5 and Shadow 4. And he has Military and Intrigue, which is that's nice for Baratheon because they rarely have that combination of icons outside of a few lore characters. Reaction: after you win a challenge in which Sir Preston Greenfield is participating, the losing opponent must move 1 power from their faction card to a standing character that they control. Now, I think that this just doesn't work if they don't have any standing characters. I think if they can't move any power to a standing character because their board's kneeling, then the power just stays where it is. But regardless, a decent enough ability. I mean, a lot of times moving a power like that will get rid of it in the long term because of resets and such, but I don't think it's really worth it if you don't have any like additional synergy with either Shadows or that Kingsguard trait. But in a Kingsguard deck, like in a White Book deck, does he really make the cut? Because then you have access to all the Kingsguard characters, and there are definitely ones with stronger abilities than this. So I'm not sure about this guy. Maybe he'll be like a one-of in Shadow decks. Oh, goodness. I definitely think he could go in Kingdom of Shadows, because that tends to be a reset-heavy deck and a removal-heavy deck. Like, you have a bunch of targeted removal with Sir Robert Strong and Catspaw and things like that. And in particular, you could combo this with Varys, the Shadow version of Varys. So one copy of this guy could definitely do some work in a Kingdom of Shadows deck, I guess. Then we have Shadow of the North, the Stark Shadow event. And of course, they get one that is actually fairly decent. I don't know, actually. I'll talk about this. So, it's Shadow 1. Action, raise the claim value on your plot by 1. So, it's a Winter is Coming that costs 3, but goes through Shadows. And it requires a Winter plot to come back to your hand. So, they have seemingly pushed a bit in this cycle the Shadows combined with Winter plots theme for Stark. Because I believe Tower of the Hand Stark version that came out is a location where if it's Winter and a card you control comes out of Shadows, you can choose and stand any Stark character. So that's like another Winter plus Shadows card. So maybe like Stark Assault from the Shadows with Winter plots is somehow going to be a thing. I don't know. Maybe you could give it a try, I guess. I do think this is straight up worse than Winter is Coming, unless you have like specific synergies with either the Shadows trait, the Shadows ability, or the Winter plot cards to get it back into your hand. I mean, maybe you could give it a shot. Who knows? We have Shadow of the Rose. This is the Tyrell Shadow event. And this one is Shadow 2, so it's expensive. Search the top 10 cards of your deck for a card with Shadow, reveal it, and put it into Shadows. Shuffle your deck. If there's a Summer Plot card revealed, return it to your hand. So it's kind of a shame that I just finished playing my Kingdom of Shadows decks, because Lord knows this would have been in the Tyrell one. At least 2 of these would have gone straight in there, and probably 3 to be honest. Because you pay 4, but whatever card you search goes straight into Shadows. So the net gold amount is 2. You're paying 2 for a search the top 10 and put something into Shadows for any card with Shadow. And of course in Kingdom of Shadows, you find whichever one you want, like a Robert Strong or the Queen of Thorns with Shadow, and whatever card that you need to do your combo. And if there's a Summer, you get it back. And of course, double trade routes at a minimum gives you 2 Summer plots right there. And then you could also do, I don't know, like exchange of information and things like that to get more Summer plots. Plus, there's a decent chance that your opponent will have a Summer reveal, because Summer plots are fairly common. So this is definitely a good card for Tyrell Kingdom of Shadows. And probably Assault from the Shadows as well probably also works well enough. I don't know about... Well, I guess you could also do, like, the Tyrell Banner of the Lion. But basically Shadow decks, I think this is quite fine to use. I think Tyrell is definitely looking like they have some of the best Shadows tech at this point. It's between them and Lannister, at least. Anyways, Small Folk Mob, we have the Stark Shadow character. And this is a pretty solid character. I think you could put this just into any Stark Sacrifice deck, because it's action, sacrifice a unique Stark character, put it into play. So you do have to sacrifice a unique character, but there's a few that... So you can't sacrifice Bear Island Scout or Winterfell Steward to put it into play, and that actually is kind of unfortunate, but there's still a lot of good targets for it, and it's probably still worth using. I mean, you can just sacrifice Rickon, Bran, Mira, Summer, Sansa, Arya, like, there's plenty of targets for it. And you can, just get an on-demand sacrifice to trigger Robb or Mira or whatever you want to do. This card definitely has potential. Because that's one of the weaknesses of the Sacrifice deck, is with Wyman being restricted, is kind of like Skagos is your only way to get a reliable on-demand sacrifice, and it's kind of awkward if you don't have access to Skagos, to find ways to just sacrifice your dudes at the best times, and this gives you a way to do it. Or at least a way to do it once or twice, however many of these you draw. So, decent option there. We have Sparrows. This is the 7 character. It's the 7 and it's Shadows. Interesting. The stats are really bad. It's 2 and Shadow 2. and only 2 strength power icon, but it has reaction after it comes out of Shadows. Move 1 power from an opponent's faction card to another the 7 card you control. So probably a card for Faith Militant decks. Even in those decks, though, the stats are so bad, I don't know if it's worth it. I don't know, yeah. The ability is decent. It's just a question of whether that trade-off is worth it for paying 4 for a 2 strength power single icon. And I honestly am not sure. I would give it a maybe. It's a maybe for Faith Militant decks, basically only. And I'm not sure if it will work even then. But it will at least be a consideration. Next we have the Mountain Skull, a Martell attachment. 3 cost, big Martell attachment. Attached character gets +2 strength and gains renown. In reaction, after an opponent's character with printed strength 6 or higher is killed, put the Mountain Skull into play from your hand or discard pile. So 3 gold for +2 strength and renown is bad. The only way this is worth it is if you're consistently putting it into play from your discard pile. But it's a pretty specific condition there. There's a lot of decks that have 0 characters in them with printed strength 6 or higher. So I would say probably not ever worth using because it's too inconsistent in terms of the chances being really high that the opponent's deck... I mean, even decks that have characters with that much strength, there's only like 2 of them in the deck maybe. So what are the odds that one of those characters ever dies? They might never, just because the opponent didn't draw them, or the only one they drew was, the 7 strength Victarion Greyjoy, and he's never going to leave play because it's Greyjoy. And in that case, this is just a really bad card. So yeah, I give it a maybe for Martell Cohort, though, because you can switch it out with... what is the one? Either Venomous Blade or Locked Away. I don't know if that's actually good either, but that is, I guess, a possibility. I mean, maybe you could do it then. Who knows? Now we have the new agenda. Another agenda already. The White Book, the Kingsguard agenda. So, you may include non-loyal Kingsguard characters from any faction in your deck, and you must include at least 7 different Kingsguard characters in your deck. Reaction, after you win a challenge, kneel your faction card to stand each defending Kingsguard character you control, each participating Kingsguard character, instead if you control a king or queen character. So this is an interesting agenda. It will lead to unique deck compositions because of the deck building requirements and ability, where you can put Kingsguards from any faction in. I'm not sure which ones those will be, but there will probably be a pretty clear lineup that gets selected fairly quickly, for me at least, similar to the Kingdom of Shadows cards, where I quickly narrow it down to well, this is the best lineup, these are the ones that are going to go in. And then it's obviously an agenda you use with factions where you have kings and queens, because it's not really going to be worth it if you don't have that king or queen trait out there to activate the non-conditional stand. Standing only on defense is not that good, but being able to stand on any challenge, it could be worth it, especially, it's just pretty efficient then, I think. I think maybe you could justify it in that case. So the factions that this can go with, this can actually go with most factions. The ones that are going to have trouble using it off the top of my head is obviously Martell and Night's Watch, but I think every other faction, has pretty reasonable options for king and queen characters to activate this. I think the 3 factions that I'm going to be testing it with, Baratheon and Tyrell are the most obvious because those are already main king factions, and then also Greyjoy, which is a bit disgusting, but if we're being honest, you can run King Balon, the queen version of Alanis, both of which are good cards on their own, and you can throw in a couple of the king attachment for Greyjoy. I can't remember what it's called. The King of Salt and Rock, that's it. And then you have 8 to 9 king and queen cards in your deck, and it makes the agenda very very reliable, I guess you could say. Also, because you're Greyjoy and you're resilient to resets, and this agenda is going to get its value when you have a big board with a lot of big characters. Because in order for it to really be impressive, you at least need 1 king or queen and 1 Kingsguard character in play. So that's a couple pretty big characters right there, and it's not really going to be impressive until you have more than 1 Kingsguard character in play that you can stand with it. each turn, because it stands all of them. So if you're only standing one, it's probably not as good. But if you're standing like 2 or 3, especially if they have renown like Barristan Selmy and stuff like that, then it can get spooky. And Greyjoy, because they resist resets really well, can be like, yeah, go right ahead, play your Valar Morghulis. I want you to do that. You're still going to lose. So, I mean, it's Greyjoy. What are you going to do? I think that's like the other best faction for this. But I think you can do it with Stark, Targaryen, and Lannister. All have enough kings or queens. Technically, you can do it with Martell by putting in Mance Raider and King Beyond the Wall. Good luck with that. And similarly with Night's Watch. With Night's Watch, at least it could be a little more viable, because what you could do then, which would be interesting, is use the Wildling Jon Snow and make a deck that's like White Book combo of Wildlings and Kingsguards. And my guess is that's probably too much stuff to try to cram into one deck. It wouldn't really work, but it would be interesting. You could try it. Anyways, another sort of big card for the pack here, we have the new version of Tyrion Lannister, a Shadow version. So he's 6 and Shadow 5 with his 5 strength, intrigue, and power, and he has insight, so that's nice. And he has reaction after a non-event card you control comes out of Shadows. Place another card you control in Shadows with a Shadow token on it. While that card is in Shadows, it gains Shadow X. X is its printed cost. So I think this is a fine card for Shadows decks. Similarly to the Shadow Cersei, he's expensive. And like that's my number one concern, is it's just going to be expensive to pay for him. But if you can pay for him and protect him and keep him on the board, he obviously has potential to just put Mandamore or Robert Strong back into Shadows, and like obviously that's good. So I think he can see some use there. He is loyal, so he will not be in Kingdom of Shadows decks for other factions, which is probably good. It's more Shadows tech for Lannister, but I don't think it's as good as something like the Tyrell Shadow of the Rose, because of the expense and the fact that he's an investment. You're going to need to keep him protected, and you don't necessarily want to do that in a Shadows deck. Like, you might want to be free to just play Valar Morghulis or Valar Dohaeris if you need to, and you don't want to have a card like this around if you're playing those resets. So that makes him awkward. Maybe, in a Shadows deck that's less reset heavy, where you're trying to win without necessarily playing Valars, then maybe he's better. I don't know. We have the White Cloak, a 1 gold neutral attachment. Knight character you control only. Attached character gains the Kingsguard trait, and then interrupts when a king or queen would be killed. Kneel attached character to save it. This is a maybe for Kingsguard decks, because you can basically use it as an additional bodyguard for specifically your king or queen characters. Definitely the only real reason to use it. Well, I guess also the fact that the character that gains the Kingsguard trait then also can stand using the agenda. So maybe this can be used in White Book decks, and I'm not sure about that. I may or may not give it a try depending on deck space. But it could be good then, because you get like an extra save, and you potentially get an extra stand off of your agenda out of this attachment. And the potential to save your king character from Valar Morghulis is definitely worth it. And now we have the new version of Yoren. And this seems like quite a powerful card. 6 gold and only 3 strength with military and intrigue, but that's because his ability is so strong. Reaction after Yoren enters play, choose a character with printed cost 5 or lower, take control of that character until Yoren leaves play. So this is a card that can basically force a reset out of an opponent depending on what it steals. If it steals something really strong, then they'll either have to play a reset, or they'll just have to deal with the fact that, that's just your card now and it's going to stay your card. And it could be pretty powerful. There's all kind of 4 and 5 gold characters that you could steal that would be strong. And you could even steal something like, if you're going up against Baratheon, let's say you steal their Meister Kirwan, and now you can play your Milks and Cravens and they can't do anything about it. And that's really strong as well. It also has the potential in attrition decks, like the Night's Watch Banner of the Wolf, where you steal like Claim Soak, and then you do March to the Wall and Ward and stuff like that, which is really obnoxious. Definitely a potentially powerful card. And another thing that Night's Watch can reliably play on their top end. Night's Watch has definitely had one of the weaker, like, sort of high-end expensive characters, so they have another option here with a fairly unique ability. So that's nice, I guess. He's, like, expensive and worth playing, but he's not the typical big dude with a keyword and a powerful ability related to doing challenges. He's more of an event, like the first version of Yorin. So yeah, he'll definitely see some play. Oh man, well, that is the pack. Like I said, quite a few spicy cards in this pack. I'm trying to see if there's any that I really don't like and think are that I'm sad that they're printing. Well, Music of Dragons, this is absolute garbage. They should not print this. This is just a really boring, dumb card. Just enabling more Drogon in a faction that's already like at least half, at least 50% or more built around the 6-cost version of Drogon. It's really stupid. But these other cards, I mean, the Mountain Skull just seems really bad, so that one is not... I don't like this one in the sense that it seems unplayable, but I'd always rather that they print unplayable garbage than that they print cards that are really broken or obnoxious and make the game unfun. Because a card that's really bad and is binder fodder doesn't actually do any harm to enjoyments of the game. No one's going to play it, so who cares? But a card like the 7-cost version of Victarion that like warps the entire game around it, and like the game is decided by whether or not they have that card and then whether or not you can put a milk on it, that will take a game that otherwise could have been fun and makes it not fun. So cards that are really bad, I'm way more fine with than cards that are really good. Yeah, but the rest of the cards seem, I don't know, pretty reasonable. This Yorin is a bit spooky, but I'll withhold judgment on him until we actually see some games out of him and, sort of see how good he is or isn't. And definitely think the White Book agenda could be interesting. I mean, I guess I have to test this agenda now, right? It's a new agenda. I have to play decks with it, just like I did for Kingdom of Shadows. Stop printing so many new agendas, Fantasy Flight. Damn it. When am I ever going to finish my Brotherhood games if you just keep printing new agendas that I have to test? So, yeah. That's my pack review for the Blackwater.